My wife cheated with our best friend and stole $150, $0 from our joint account. Then she filed for divorce claiming I'm the one in the wrong. And now I'm fighting to keep our house worth $500, $0 and the inheritance of $200, $0 she tried to hide. I never thought I'd be the guy standing in front of his wife, accusing her of cheating, while everything crumbles around us. Honestly, I didn't suspect anything at first. We had been married for 8 years, and for the most part I thought we had a good thing going. She, Sarah, was the kind of woman who always knew how to turn on the charm, bitchy at times, yes, but sharp and confident. We had our routines, our ups and downs, but I never imagined she'd betray me the way she did. That was until I started noticing strange things, small stuff at first, but enough to make my gut twist. It all started about 3 months ago. I work in finance, so I'm pretty good with numbers, and I tend to notice odd patterns when they pop up. One day, I decided to look at our joint bank account for some routine expense tracking. Nothing unusual, until I saw that $150, $0 was missing, gone just like that. I stared at the screen thinking maybe it was a mistake, but the transaction was legit. I double-checked and it was transferred to an account I didn't recognize. When I asked Sarah about it, she brushed it off, said it was an investment she was making. For us, she said, with that bitchy smirk she always wears when she's hiding something. But I wasn't convinced. I started digging a little more. She was acting weird, more secretive, more defensive. She'd stay late at work or suddenly have girls' nights that turned into hours of texting. She'd get defensive if I tried to look at her phone or ask questions about her whereabouts. The more I pressed, the more she lied. She told me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that I was just jealous. That's classic, right? When a woman is caught cheating, she blames the husband for being insecure or crazy. Then I found the real proof. I was snooping through her emails, something I hate to admit, but I was desperate, and I saw the messages. There were dozens of them, explicit and heated. She was having sex with our best friend, Mike. I couldn't believe it. I mean, Mike is practically family, our best friends for years. I never thought he'd do this to me, to us. And Sarah, she was so brazen about it. She told him she hated her marriage, that I was dull and boring, that she needed excitement. They planned trips together, sent each other pictures of their bodies, and even talked about how to keep the affair secret from me. That moment hit me like a punch in the gut. I felt betrayed, humiliated, furious. I couldn't believe she'd do this with Mike, our best friend. It was one thing to cheat, but to do it with someone I trusted implicitly. That was a whole new level of insult. I remember sitting there, staring at the screen, feeling my stomach knot up. The worst part, I knew she was lying about the money too. She claimed she was saving for some investment, but I found out she'd stolen that $150, $0 from our joint account, probably to fund her affair or her new life with Mike. I didn't know what to do first. I felt I was losing my mind. My wife, my best friend, my money, all gone. And she had the nerve to keep acting like everything was fine, like I was overreacting. I was furious, but I also felt helpless. How do you confront someone who's been lying to your face for months? How do you handle the betrayal when it's so personal, so deep? That's when I started planning my next move. I knew I had to find out everything, what she was hiding, what she'd taken, and how far this was going to go. I wasn't just going to let her walk away with my life savings and my wife. I needed a plan. I needed revenge. The next few days felt like walking through a fog. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that wicked smile she always wore when she thought she was getting away with something. I started digging into our finances deeper, pulling every statement, every transaction. Turns out, she'd been siphoning money out of our joint account for almost a year. She transferred it in small amounts, but I tracked it back to a secret account she opened under a fake name. That's when I realized. She'd been planning this for a long time, maybe even before she started her affair with Mike. I confronted her that night. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I sat her down in the living room, just the two of us, and laid out everything I'd found. Her face shifted, first shock, then annoyance, then outright anger. She looked at me like I was the crazy one, like I'd lost my mind. "You're overreacting," she snapped. "You're just jealous because I'm finally happy." Happy. She was cheating with our best friend and stealing from us, and she was calling that happiness. I didn't buy it. I told her I knew everything about the affair, about the money. Her eyes widened and she started spinning some bullshit about how I was paranoid, how she only loved me, but I could see the cracks in her story. She tried to deny everything, then flipped the script, saying I was controlling, insecure, and that I was the one ruining the marriage. I was furious. I told her she was a lying bitch, that I'd never trust her again. That's when she got really bitchy, told me I was overreacting, that I was just jealous of her hot affair, and that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. She said she deserved to be happy, that she needed this excitement, that she was tired of my boring, predictable life. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. It was like she was trying to turn everything around on me, make me the bad guy. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept going over everything in my head. The betrayal, the lies, the money she stole. I could feel my blood boiling. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. I felt numb but also determined. I realized that I couldn't just confront her and expect her to come clean. No, I needed a plan. I needed to find out exactly how much she'd taken, where it was, and what she was planning next. I started making calls, digging into her accounts, trying to trace every dollar. I also contacted a private investigator, someone I knew from work, who specialized in financial crimes and infidelity. If I was going to get her back, I needed to be one step ahead. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep this went. She hidden the money in multiple accounts, moved it overseas, and even bought herself a new apartment in the city. She was planning to run away with Mike, I was sure of it. I started to feel the full weight of what I was up against. Not just losing my wife, but losing everything I'd worked for. The house, the inheritance, the life savings, all potentially gone if I didn't act fast. I remember sitting alone in my office late at night, staring at the screen, feeling both betrayed and surprisingly clear-headed. I knew I had to fight for what was mine. I had to stop her from slipping away with my money and my life. I was angry, but I also knew I had to be smart. I couldn't let her see how much she'd broken me. I had to keep my cool, gather all the evidence, and prepare for the fight ahead. I was about to turn the tables. She thought she was winning, but she had no idea what she was walking into. Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own life. Every moment was about gathering proof, planning my next move, and trying not to let the rage consume me. I knew Sarah was planning to leave, maybe even that very week. She'd been acting more frantic, more reckless. Her phone was constantly ringing, and I could see her nervously deleting texts and calls. I started monitoring her movements, watching her leave the house at odd hours, always with her purse tightly clutched. The more I saw, the more I realized she was trying to cover her tracks, but I had already connected too many dots. I also reached out to the private investigator I'd hired. His name was Mark, and he had a reputation for being discreet and effective. I told him everything I knew about the affair, the stolen money, the secret accounts. Mark promised to dig into her financials to find out exactly how much she'd taken and where it was. Meanwhile, I kept quiet at home, pretending everything was normal, even though inside I was burning with anger and betrayal. One night, I decided to check her phone again. I found a new string of messages with Mike, explicit, dirty, and completely incriminating. They were talking about how they couldn't wait to be free, how they'd finally start their new lives. Together, I felt my stomach turn. That was the final straw. I knew then I had to act fast. I called Mark again and told him to get the evidence I needed to take her to court. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, not just emotionally but financially too. The next day I confronted her with the evidence I'd collected. I sat her down in the living room, laid everything out on the table, screenshots, bank statements, her own lies. Her face twisted in anger and shock. She tried to deny everything, but I had her dead to rights. I told her I knew about the affair, about the stolen money, about the secret accounts. She looked at me with pure venom, spat out some bullshit about how I was just jealous, how she didn't love Mike, how she was just having fun and needed excitement. I didn't buy any of it. I told her she was a lying, cheating bitch who had ruined everything, that I wasn't going to let her walk away with my house, my inheritance, or my dignity. I told her I was filing for divorce, and that I was going to fight her in court for everything she tried to hide, especially the money she stole from us. Her eyes blazed with fury, but I could see her panic creeping in. She realized I wasn't going to go down quietly. I was done being the passive husband. I was ready to fight for what was mine, and I wasn't going to let her get away with this. That night, I stayed up late, drafting a plan. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in divorce and financial crimes. I wanted to make sure she couldn't hide any more money, that I could get the house, and that the inheritance she tried to conceal would be part of the settlement. I also told Mark to keep digging. If she was planning to run, I wanted to be the one to catch her first. I'd never felt so betrayed, so furious, and yet somehow, I knew I had to stay focused. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about protecting what was left of my life and making her pay for the damage she caused. I looked around the house I'd built with her, knowing she'd probably try to take everything, including the house worth half. $1 million and the inheritance of $200, $0 she tried to hide. I realized that I'd have to fight tooth and nail to keep what's mine. I wasn't going to let her walk away with a clean slate while I was left picking up the pieces. That's when I made up my mind. I was going to fight her in every way possible, legally, financially, and emotionally. She thought she'd played me, but she had no idea I was already planning my next move. This was only the beginning. The days that followed felt like a war zone. I was constantly on edge, waiting for the next bombshell, the next move she'd make to try to cover her tracks or escape. I kept pushing forward with the legal process, gathering every shred of evidence I could find to prove her lies, her theft, and her betrayal. I also enlisted the help of a financial forensic expert to trace all the money she'd hidden, especially the $150, $0 she stole from our joint account. Mark the Pie kept me updated. He found accounts overseas, shell companies, and even some luxury properties she'd bought under fake names. Meanwhile, Sarah's attitude grew more bitchy and defiant. She'd spin stories, try to gaslight me, call me paranoid or insecure whenever I confronted her. She even accused me of cheating, which was laughable considering I was too busy trying to keep my life from falling apart. Every conversation turned into a battle. She'd yell, call me names, and insist she was the victim. You never cared about me, she'd say. You're just a boring husband who's jealous of my happiness. Yeah, right. I wanted to tell her that the only thing I was jealous of was her ability to lie and cheat with no remorse, but I kept my cool. I knew I had to stay composed if I wanted to win this. One day, I caught her trying to make a run for it. She slipped out early in the morning with a suitcase, heading toward the airport. I was already waiting for her in the driveway. I confronted her right there, told her I knew she was planning to leave with Mike and the stolen money. That was the moment I saw her panic. She tried to deny it, but her face gave her away. I called the police right then and there, not to arrest her but to have a record of her fleeing. I told her she was not going anywhere until this was settled. I also called my lawyer, who advised me to freeze all her accounts and set up a restraining order. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty doorway where she'd left in such a rush. I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Relief because I'd stopped her from running away with everything, and emptiness because I knew I was losing my wife, the life I'd built, and my trust in someone I thought loved me. I was exhausted, physically, emotionally, financially, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let her take everything. I was going to fight her in court, expose her secrets, and make sure she paid for what she did. The legal battle was about to get serious. I was prepared to go all the way, no matter how much she lied, cheated, or tried to manipulate the system. I had the evidence, the witnesses, and the law on my side. I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. I looked at the documents I'd collected, the bank statements, the emails, the recordings I'd secretly made of her trying to justify her actions. I had her cornered, and I was ready to fight to the bitter end. In the midst of all this chaos, I also realized something else. I'd been so focused on revenge and protecting my assets that I forgot about myself. I'd let her tear me down, but now I understood that I needed to heal, to rebuild. This wasn't just about winning in court. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my sense of self. I promised myself I wouldn't let her destroy me completely. I'd learn from this, move on, and come out stronger. But first, I had to win this fight, no matter how dirty or painful it got. I was in it to the end. The court date was set sooner than I expected, and I knew I had to be prepared for everything. Sarah, of course, pulled out all the stops, lying, twisting facts, trying to paint herself as the victim. She told the judge I was controlling, jealous, and that her affair was just a mistake, a misguided attempt at finding herself. She even claimed that I had emotionally abused her, which made my blood boil. I had all the evidence, her secret accounts, the emails, the bank statements, the recordings of her talking about her plans with Mike. I knew I had her dead to rights, but I also knew how manipulative she could be. My lawyer was a beast, sharp, relentless. We prepared a detailed case to prove that she had stolen the $150, $0, concealed the inheritance of $200, $0, and that her affair with Mike was ongoing and planned. We also had evidence that she was trying to sell the house, which was worth about $500, $0, in an attempt to get out of her financial obligations and escape with the money. I was nervous, but I also felt a strange sense of confidence. I knew I had the truth on my side. The day of the hearing, I sat across from her in the courtroom, feeling a mixture of anger and resolve. She looked at me with that bitchy sneer, confident she could spin her way out of this mess. But I didn't care. I was ready. When the judge asked questions, I presented everything, line by line, fact by fact. I explained how she'd manipulated our finances, how she'd planned her affair with Mike, and how she tried to hide the inheritance. I saw her trying to wiggle out of it, but the evidence was overwhelming. At one point, she tried to claim that I was the one controlling her, that I'd been emotionally abusive, and that she was just seeking happiness. I couldn't believe her audacity. I told the court that her actions proved otherwise, that she'd betrayed her vows, stolen from us, and lied to everyone around her. I also presented the recordings, which clearly showed her talking about leaving, about her plans with Mike, and how she'd been stealing money for months. The judge listened carefully, took notes, and I could see the wheels turning. In the end, the judge made a ruling that stunned her. She granted me full control over the house, which was a relief because I was terrified she'd try to sell it or hide it. The court also ordered her to return the stolen money, including the inheritance she tried to conceal, and to pay damages for the financial fraud. As she sat there, stunned and furious, I felt a strange sense of victory, like I'd finally taken back some dignity, some control. But the real aftermath was even messier. Sarah didn't take the court's decision well. She stormed out, cursing, calling me a vindictive bastard, and swore she'd fight this all the way. I knew her pride was hurt, but I also knew she'd keep trying to manipulate the situation. I stayed calm, knowing that I'd done everything I could to prove my case. I'd won the legal battle, but the emotional battle was far from over. In the days that followed, I worked on rebuilding my life. I filed for divorce, and the process moved quickly after the court's decision. I also started therapy, something I should have done a long time ago, to deal with the betrayal and the pain. I realized that I'd been by someone I loved and trusted, and now I had to learn how to trust myself again. I still had the house, the inheritance, and the ability to start over. But more than anything, I learned that in the face of betrayal, you have to fight for yourself. You have to stand up, gather your evidence, and refuse to be the victim. That's what I did, and I'm not going to let her define me anymore. It's been a brutal ride, but I've come out the other side stronger. If there's one thing I'd say to anyone going through something similar, it's this: don't wait. Don't let the betrayal fester in silence. Fight back, legally, emotionally, whatever it takes. Because in the end, you're the only one who can reclaim your life. Looking back now, I realize that the entire ordeal changed me in ways I never expected. I thought I knew everything about trust, loyalty, and love, but betrayal has a way of stripping all that away. It was a brutal lesson, but one I had to learn the hard way. I never imagined I'd be the guy fighting for his house, his inheritance, and his dignity against the woman I married, and her lover no less. That kind of pain is hard to describe, but somehow I managed to find a way through it. The biggest lesson I've taken from this is that no matter how much someone seems to love you, you can't ignore the signs when they start to betray you. I missed a lot of warning signs, her secretive phone calls, the sudden trips, the way she'd lie about small things. I kept convincing myself she was just stressed or busy, but deep down I think I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to face it. Now I see that ignoring red flags only makes things worse. Revenge wasn't the goal, but it became a necessity. I needed her to pay for what she'd done, and I needed to protect what was mine. The legal battle, the evidence, the court, those were my weapons. I learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty, not out of spite, but because the other person is willing to do the same. I also learned that you have to be patient. Justice isn't always quick, but it's worth fighting for. Most importantly, I've come to understand that healing takes time. I still feel the sting of betrayal, but I no longer let it consume me. I've started rebuilding my life, focusing on my work, my friends, and my own mental health. The house is mine again, and I'm slowly moving forward. I've realized that I don't need her to define my happiness, that I can do that myself. I hope she finds whatever it is she's searching for, but I know one thing. I'm better off without her. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, I want you to know this. Don't let betrayal destroy you. Fight for what's rightfully yours. Trust your instincts. And above all, don't be afraid to walk away from someone who's willing to throw everything away for a moment of selfish pleasure. Because in the end, the only person you truly have is yourself. And if you're lucky, you'll come out stronger on the other side, just like I did.